At 2 a.m., 25-year-old Antoinette Kovar gets into her car and drives home from work. She turns the key and steps into her kitchen. Inside, a masked stranger waits in the darkness.
I had my hand on the handle, but he was behind me and had his hands over my eyes and my mouth and said, "Don't say a word. I'm not gonna hurt you." The next thing I remember, he was kind of dragging me from the back to the bedroom.
During the attack, Kovar's bedside phone continues to ring. She tells the rapist it's her boyfriend and he'll be coming home soon. With that, the man abruptly stops and makes for the front door.
He said, "Don't you come after me or I'll come back." Well, at that instant, when I heard the screen door close, I said, "That's too bad." And I jumped up, grabbed it was a robe sitting on my stationary bike. I grabbed that, wrapped it around my bottom, and I ran out the front door after him. But he was gone. I was in the middle of the street. He was gone.
Antoinette Kovar runs back to her house and dials 911. Police arrive and discover that the rapist entered through an unlocked window in the living room. They dust the house for fingerprints, but find only those of Antoinette Kovar, suggesting the rapist wore gloves. Meanwhile, Kovar is taken to the emergency room, where an examination yields a sample of her attacker's semen and possibly his DNA. Now, all this victim can do is wait for the police to make an arrest. Over the next 2 months, they identified 4 more rapes, all occurring on the south side of St. Louis, all with the same MO. A single man, face covered, wearing gloves and carrying a gun. He marks his crime with his signature behavior, performing oral sex on his victim before raping her. After the attack, he adds a final, twisted detail.
He would make them bathe after he raped them, I guess to destroy evidence. He thought, his thinking was he could destroy evidence that way.
St. Louis mobilizes a task force to hunt for a man detectives are now calling the South Side Rapist. 3 months after its inception, the task force is out of working leads, and there are no new cases to follow. The team is dissolved. The investigation goes cold, and stays cold for nearly 3 years. 1 a.m. Sex crimes detective Mark Chambers is working alone at his desk when the phone rings. The voice on the line is that of a woman who has just been raped.
Apparently, the rapist came through a kitchen window, because we found the kitchen window open where he had gotten in. Came through a kitchen window and came upstairs. He was wearing a ski mask. He was armed with a gun. He had gloves on his hands. And he did basically the same thing that the Southside Rapist had done in the past.
It appears the Southside Rapist may have returned. St. Louis detectives need hard evidence. They send a semen sample from their victim to be compared to the DNA profile developed from the prior assaults. The DNA is a match. Detectives expand their investigation geographically, hoping to get a fix on their suspect's reach.
We decided to call a meeting of all the interested departments from the area to see if any of them had had any similar occurrences.
33-year-old Jennifer Jewer lives in a small house with her 8-year-old son. After putting him to bed one winter evening, Jewer relaxes on her couch. Within 30 minutes, she has fallen fast asleep.
The next thing I knew, somebody apparently had shut the light off and was sitting on my lap facing me. And he said, "If you make any noise, I'll effing kill you. You hear me? I'll effing kill you."
The man threatens Jewer with what appears to be a gun. He forces her into the bedroom and begins to sexually assault her. Finally, the rapist gets up and leaves the room. When Jewer is convinced he's no longer in the house, she wakes up her son and drives them both to the police station. Detectives escort Jewer to the hospital, where she is examined. Using a rape kit, doctors collect evidence from the victim's body and send it to the crime lab for DNA testing. 6 weeks later, DNA confirms investigators' suspicions, and Jennifer Jewer becomes the 13th confirmed victim of the South Side Rapist. Eugene Frigo and his girlfriend are spending a quiet Saturday night at home when Frigo hears a noise in the yard outside.
Well, we heard a loud boom and looked out the vertical blinds and seen a face. And then he seen mine, and then he turned around and started running down the street.
The man jumps into a van and drives away. Clad only in a pair of shorts, Frigo grabs his keys, gets into his car, and gives chase.
911. Yeah, I was at my house. I heard somebody kicking the cars and everything, and I looked out the window, and there was somebody on my porch. The guy spotted me. He ran away. His car was parked at the end of my street. I got him in front of me right now. His license plate is DMP, Missouri. Okay, I got the plate, sir, but I need you to stop following him. Okay, this guy is moving now. I'm letting him go. Okay, you let him go. You tell me where you are. I'll send the police to you.
Sassinger runs the license plate number Frigo provides, but determines that the plates are stolen. Then detectives enter the tag number into the Regional Justice Information System, or REGIS. This database acts as a cross-check, allowing Sassinger to see if any other law enforcement agency has run the plates within the past 5 months. 4 months earlier, Inspector Dennis Simpson had been working surveillance on a house suspected of trafficking narcotics.
Part of that surveillance was monitoring who went in and out of the house, writing down license plates of vehicles that came and went. And one of the license plates that I wrote down happened to be one Detective Sassinger was interested in.
Sassinger begins surveillance on the house where Dennis Simpson first observed the stolen plates. 14 days later, a van bearing the tag number appears in the driveway.
We drove over to the address, and I asked who owned the vehicle. And a person named Dennis Rabbit said he was the owner of the vehicle. And I said, well, guess what? I got a warrant on this vehicle. You know, you're with me.
After 4 hours of proclaiming his innocence, Rabbit agrees to provide cold case detectives with his fingerprints and the DNA sample. Investigators then have no choice but to release their suspect back into society.
I was working on the computer and I was like, oh my God, it's him. I thought, I even said it in the lab. I was looking at the computer, I was like, oh my God. About fell out the chair.
Mary Beth Carr has matched Rabbit's DNA profile to the genetic signature of the Southside Rapist. But Dennis Rabbit, it appears, has decided to run. 6 months after the DNA match was first made, St. Louis's Southside Rapist has once again made good his escape. A mother calls the police to report that her 15-year-old daughter is missing.
She found a note that had a person's name by the name of Nathan Babbitt, a phone number, and a room number.
The phone number comes back to the Freeway Inn. Officer Scott Parsons and his partner follow up with a knock on the door of room 121. A middle-aged man answers.
He saw both of us standing in our uniforms and raised his hands and said, you know, she told me she was 18, and anytime somebody begins their conversation with a police officer, well, she told me she was 18, there's probably going to be a problem.
While Parsons keeps an eye on the suspect, his partner checks the man's social security number. A slew of felony warrants from St. Louis comes back on one Dennis Rabbit. Albuquerque notifies the FBI that Dennis Rabbit is in custody.
I'm laying in bed on a Sunday morning, 10 o'clock in the morning. Paul Swenson from the FBI calls me up and says, we've got him.
Any relief?
On March 3rd, Dennis Rabbit is extradited out of New Mexico. Detectives set up a video camera, and Dennis Rabbit agrees to make a clean breast of it.
And Dennis basically bled his heart. You know, he told us everything. He would get into details of the color of the victim's car. It was amazing, the things that he would remember.
I went into the living room, and before I woke her up, I turned the light out. And then I accosted her. I also had that fake pistol with me. And I took her in the bedroom, and I raped her.
Dennis Rabbit is describing the rape of 33-year-old Jennifer Jewer. After 2 hours, he has added 23 other names to the list of women he has violated. Rabbit eventually pleads guilty to 49 charges of sexual assault and is sentenced to 5 consecutive life sentences.
Thank God they got the right guy, and I didn't have to testify and go through it all over again, because they surely could have dragged it out, and for what reason, I don't know. He admitted to it, and I was glad that it was over.